He was sitting in the back row of his own life, watching everyone else move forward while he stayed perfectly still. The office lights were still on. The phone was still in his hand. The email he needed to send had been open for an hour. One message could have changed everything. One honest conversation. One proposal. One chance to say, "This is what I want." But his chest tightened the way it always did when the possibility of failure came close enough to touch. So he did what he had learned to do best. He waited, delayed, polished, corrected, and called it preparation. On the outside, it looked like caution. On the inside, it was fear dressed up as intelligence. He told himself he was being responsible. He told himself the timing wasn't right. He told himself the market needed to be better, the relationship needed more certainty, the moment needed to be cleaner. But the truth was harsher than that. He was not avoiding failure. He was avoiding embarrassment. He was avoiding the sting of being seen trying and not succeeding. He feared the small humiliation of a wrong move more than the slow humiliation of a life unlived. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you've sat in the car a little too long before walking into the meeting. Maybe you've drafted the text and deleted it. Maybe you've watched the years pass while telling yourself you were being careful. If so, listen closely. That hesitation is not protecting you. It is training you to shrink. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from standing near the arena and never entering it. It doesn't make noise at first. It builds quietly. A missed opportunity here, a muted opinion there, a dream postponed again and again until it becomes a habit to want less than you were made for. And the tragedy is that many strong people are living this way, not because they lack talent, but because they were never taught how to survive being wrong. But failure, when understood properly, is not a verdict. It is information. It is pressure. It is a mirror. And if you learn to face it without collapsing, it becomes one of the most powerful tools in your life. So before we go further, ask yourself honestly, what have you been avoiding because you are afraid to fail? And what has that fear already cost you? Because once you can name the silence, you can begin to break it. And what comes next may change the way you see every risk you've been avoiding. He had spent years calling it caution, but it was fear wearing a respectable suit. He told himself he was being smart, that he was waiting for the right moment, the right market, the right woman, the right time to speak up. But every season that passed made the same truth harder to ignore. He was not waiting for life to become safer. He was waiting for himself to become less afraid. And that never happened. The wise man understands this sooner or later. The goal is not to remove fear. The goal is to stop obeying it. Because fear is persuasive. It knows how to sound like reason. It whispers, "Don't embarrass yourself. Don't risk what little you have. Better to stay quiet than be rejected." And if a man listens long enough, his world grows small enough to match his hesitation. But there is another path, and it begins with a brutal shift in perspective. Failure is not proof that you are weak. Failure is evidence that you are alive and attempting something that matters. A man who never fails is usually not a man of great wisdom. He is a man who has made himself invisible to avoid being tested. Imagine him sitting in his car outside a meeting, staring at the building through the windshield, rehearsing every possible mistake. He can feel his chest tightening. His hands are still. His future is waiting upstairs, but he remains parked in place, trapped by a shame that has not even happened yet. This is how many lives are lost, not through disaster, but through delay. The antidote is not blind confidence. It is practice. Small, intentional exposure to discomfort. The kind that teaches the nervous system a new lesson. I can survive this. Ask the question. Make the call. Offer the idea. Hear the no. Stand there when the room goes quiet and your pride wants to run. Each small failure collected on purpose becomes a brick in a stronger foundation. And something remarkable happens when a man stops treating rejection like a death sentence. His posture changes. His voice steadies. He begins to move with a kind of calm that cannot be faked, because it has been earned. He no longer needs every attempt to succeed. He only needs to keep going. Maybe you recognize yourself in this. Maybe there is a conversation, a dream, a responsibility you have been postponing because you do not want to feel foolish. But what has that avoidance cost you already? How many doors have closed while you stood outside protecting your ego? There is still time to become the kind of person who uses failure instead of fearing it. And once you see how that begins, you will never look at the arena the same way again. The first lesson is almost insulting in its simplicity. Stop treating failure like a verdict and start treating it like data. A man who is afraid of losing will spend his whole life negotiating with the edge of the cliff, while a stronger man learns where the ground is unstable and adjusts his footing. The difference is not talent. It is tolerance. It is the willingness to remain standing while your ego takes a hit. That is where real growth begins. Picture him sitting across from a woman he admires, fingers pressed together, heart racing, rehearsing every sentence in his head before he dares to speak. Or standing outside the office of a client, a manager, an investor, with a presentation ready and a voice inside whispering, "Don't embarrass yourself." He walks away, tells himself he will try next week, next month, next year. But next never comes, because perfection is a hiding place. And hiding slowly teaches a man that safety matters more than becoming someone he respects. The solution is not blind confidence. It is deliberate exposure. Small risks, controlled discomfort. Ask for the meeting, make the call, publish the work before it feels flawless. Say what you actually think, even if your voice shakes. Every no you collect is a bruise to the ego and a vaccination against fear. Every awkward moment survived is proof that humiliation is not fatal. It burns, yes, but it passes. And once a man learns that embarrassment cannot destroy him, it loses its power to control him. This is how antifragility is built. Not in comfort, but in repetition. The weight room does not reward the man who avoids strain. Neither does life. Rejection, criticism, delay, and even public mistakes can become the very forces that sharpen your mind and toughen your character. The goal is not to love suffering. The goal is to stop obeying it. When failure no longer defines you, it trains you. Clears away fantasy and reveals what is real. And if this is hitting close to home, if you recognize the habits that have kept you safe and small, take a moment and give this a like. Not for approval, but as a quiet signal that you are willing to face the truth. Because the real question is not whether you have failed before. The question is whether you are finally ready to use failure instead of fearing it. And in the next part, we're going to go deeper into the exact mindset shift that turns a setback into momentum. The first breakthrough is almost never dramatic. It doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives quietly, in the private moment when a man finally admits that his fear has been running his life. Not his circumstances, not his age, not his bad luck, his fear. And once that truth is spoken, the story begins to change. Because failure, when you stop worshiping appearances, becomes information. It tells you where you are weak. It shows you what you have avoided. It reveals the exact place where your pride is costing you progress. A man who can learn from failure is no longer fragile. He becomes adaptable. He becomes dangerous in the best sense of the word. He can take a hit, adjust, and continue. That kind of man cannot be controlled by shame. Think of the man who stays silent in the meeting, even though he has the answer. Think of the woman who keeps postponing the conversation that could save her marriage. Think of the father who knows he needs a new path, but keeps saying, "Not yet." The pain is not only in what they failed to do. The deeper pain is in the identity they build around avoidance. Eventually, hesitation becomes a habit, and habit becomes personality. But there is another way. The stronger path begins when you stop trying to protect your ego and start training it. You begin small. You ask the question. You make the call. You apply for the opportunity you feel underqualified for. You allow yourself to look foolish long enough to become free. Each small rejection is not proof that you are unworthy. It is proof that you are participating in life again. A wise man once said, "The world does not reward the man who never falls. It rewards the man who learns to rise without resentment." That is the real discipline here. Not pretending you don't feel fear, but refusing to obey it. Not chasing perfection, but building resilience. Not waiting until you are ready, but becoming ready through action. And something remarkable happens when you begin to collect small failures on purpose. The terror starts to shrink. The voice that once said, "If this goes badly, it will destroy you," loses its power. You learn that embarrassment is survivable. Rejection is survivable. Even disappointment is survivable. What is not survivable slowly is a life spent hiding from them. So ask yourself honestly, where are you still protecting your image at the cost of your future? What conversation, risk, or decision have you been postponing because you want certainty before courage? If this is hitting close to home, stay with me, because the next part is where failure stops being something you endure and becomes something you use. He began to understand something that had been hidden in plain sight. Failure was not the wall in front of him, it was the doorway through it. Every time he avoided the hard conversation, postponed the application, or swallowed the truth he needed to speak, he wasn't protecting himself. He was teaching himself to be smaller. And that lesson, repeated over years, becomes a prison. But the good news is this: a prison is built one habit at a time, and it can be dismantled the same way. The first step is not confidence. It is exposure. Small, deliberate exposure to discomfort. Ask the question you are afraid will sound foolish. Make the call before you feel ready. Submit the work before it feels perfect. Walk into the room without rehearsing your identity. There is a strange kind of freedom in doing the thing your fear says will destroy you, only to discover you are still standing afterward. Maybe even stronger, maybe quieter on the outside, but more solid inside. This is how a man becomes antifragile. Not by avoiding pressure, but by learning how to use pressure. Not by demanding certainty, but by accepting that certainty is a luxury life never promised. The man who can survive embarrassment learns that embarrassment is temporary. The man who can hear no without collapsing begins to understand that rejection is information, not annihilation. And the man who can look at his own flaws without flinching becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Not reckless, not arrogant, just unbreakable in places where he used to be fragile. You can feel the shift when it happens. Your posture changes. Your voice steadies. Your decisions stop begging for permission. You no longer need every outcome to go your way, because you've already made peace with the fact that growth always includes bruises. There is wisdom in that. There is dignity in it. A man who has made peace with failure no longer has to perform strength. He simply becomes stronger. And maybe that is the real question. Not what if I fail, but what if I keep running from the very thing that could free me? If this truth is landing in your chest, if you felt the cost of hesitation in your own life, then let it. Let it challenge you. Let it wake you up. Because the next move is not to think about courage. It is to practice it one imperfect step at a time, and in that practice, something begins to change that fear can no longer control. So he stopped waiting for confidence to appear like a gift from heaven and decided to earn it in the only place it has ever been built, under pressure. He began with small losses on purpose. He made the call before he felt ready. He asked for the meeting. He shared the idea. He spoke the truth. And every time he survived the moment he once feared, something inside him changed. The shame that had ruled his life started to lose its authority. Rejection did not kill him. Embarrassment did not erase him. Failure, when faced directly, became information. A lesson. A weapon. That is the secret too many people never learn. The world does not reward the man who never falls. It rewards the man who can rise without begging for permission. The man who can take a hit, adjust his stance, and step forward again. This is what builds real strength. Not a perfect record. Not a polished image. Not the fake piece of hiding from challenge. Real strength is anti-fragile. It gets sharper when life pushes back. And maybe that is what you have been needing to hear. Not that you are behind. Not that you are broken. But that you have been measuring your life with the wrong standard. You do not become powerful by avoiding the arena. You become powerful by returning to it again and again until fear no longer owns your name. So ask yourself honestly, what is the one thing you have been postponing because you are afraid to look foolish? What conversation have you avoided? What opportunity have you let pass? What truth have you swallowed to keep the peace? That silence has already cost you enough. It is time to pay a different price. Start today. Expect discomfort. Invite the no. Let yourself be awkward, uncertain, and human. Because every small failure you survive becomes proof that your life is bigger than your fear. And when you finally stop protecting your ego, you start building your future. If this message hit home, give it a like so it can reach another person still standing on the sidelines. And if you know you are ready to stop living cautiously, subscribe now, because the next step is learning how to turn this new mindset into a daily discipline that no setback can destroy.